Hi guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. We're looking at Tales of the Talented Tenth, Black History in Action, Bessie Stringfield. The words and pictures are by Joel Christian Gill. I believe it's based on a nonfiction book about Bessie Stringfield by a female author. So, like Elephant in the Room, this is a Black History Month book, and I kind of look at Black History Month books the way I look at propaganda cartoon specials like Fern Gully, the Rast Lane Forest, Last Rainforest. It's a fun, well animated cartoon, but once you kind of pick up on the message, you feel like you're being lectured a bit. And then when every other cartoon is Captain Planet, then you start getting sick of environmentalist messages, and you just want to see a planet where we blow up the Earth and pollute it just for laughs. So my point is that kids eventually get sick of being lectured to, and sometimes Black History Month books have a tendency to do that. They like reduce the story to hey kids, time for a lecture, rather than giving kids like an awesome, inspiring adventure. The other elephant in the room is I don't like the art style of this book that much, and I love naive art styles. I think naive art styles can be very joyful, they can be very humorous, they can lend a lot to a story, but I think this is an instance where the weaknesses in the drawing style are detracting from the story and taking me out of it. There are a couple possible solutions to that. I can tell that Joel Christian Gill looks at kind of like Tintin books. He sometimes will draw Bessie as a very simple, like Tintin style character. So maybe one direction would be simplify everything, go even more simple and cartoony with everything, or kind of lean into like the weird caricature aspect of the style, a little bit like how Matt Groening, The Simpsons are weird caricatures. Nobody has those big overlapping lips, but we're now kind of used to the Simpsons style because we see it so much, and because it's so consistently weird, there's like a uniformity to the weirdness. I think that, so either go weirder or go cuter, but this unfortunately kind of floats around like it's not cute enough to be cute, it's not weird enough for it to be weird. But I really like Bessie Stringfield, and it's sort of like her story shines through even like the portions of this that annoyed me. So I think that history is important, and maybe the best thing you can do if you think Black people are not represented enough in fiction or in history is to tell those stories. You can't just cry that their stories aren't being told. You have to do some work to preserve those stories, tell those stories, make comics about those stories, and that's always better than going on Twitter and whining that what's his name? What's Superman's name? Clark Kent. Clark Kent should be black. That's not going to help. Make an original character who will be the next Superman, right? So I respect this for telling the story of an interesting person and kind of just letting her tell her own narrative. And some bad things happen to her. So interesting. What worked for me about this was that her narrative ends up shining through. She talks about how in Jamaica, her father saw America as a land of opportunity for her mother and her, and the worst possible thing happens to her. Her mother dies, her father doesn't know how to cope with it, and so he just abandons her. And that's horrible. Like, you really feel for her as that's described, and I really appreciate that they kind of openly acknowledged her Christian faith. So she's taken to see some nuns, and she says, if I had to point to a day where my devotion to God began, I would say it was that day, the day the door slammed in the face of that wicked hotel owner. And there's the wicked hotel owner, and it's implied she uses the N-word, and the N-word is represented as kind of like a 1920s cartoon deal. So I'm always interested to see cartoonists make use of racial caricature in contemporary narratives as kind of like a shorthand for racism. That's just something that's kind of like an interest of mine. I've seen it in American-Born Chinese. I've seen it in other sources. So it's used throughout here as a representation of the N-word and of racists who reduce her to her skin color. Now, what's inspiring about Bessie's story? Now, this is maybe like another example of what like didn't work for me. They use literal crows as a metaphor for Jim Crow, and they'll have like racists transform into crows. I just thought that was a little on the nose. Like, the name of the law is Jim Crow, but you don't necessarily. I don't know. It's a cartoon metaphor for an abstract problem. And so then Bessie, as she's traveling the world on her motorcycle, She has to, use the Green Book. She has to avoid, racism. She has to avoid places where Negroes can't go. And so the crow is used as a literal metaphor for that. I guess, you know what? That works for me because I like literal visual metaphors for complex things. So this is a page that really annoyed me because this felt like a contemporary reimagining of Bessie's story where sort of like 2019 politics were being projected backwards onto World War II. So Bessie describes how she'd go to movie theaters just to have a cool air-conditioned place to eat popcorn and relax. And she sees Our Girls at War, a strange fruit news company, like a 1980s hippie song about racism. And then, he says, oh, girls are useful in more places than the kitchen. And give us a smile, sweetheart, because asking a girl to smile is the patriarchy. And we're going to blow up Hitler. Smile, Negro girl. Okay. So, the point is that, we were fighting Hitler, but racism and sexism are intersectional. And I think it would have been much more effective to just have, real quotes from a real American war propaganda film to give it that air of realism. It takes me out of the story for you to kind of bring up 2019 topics and then project it backwards. And then, of course, Bessie doesn't care about any of that. She just sees the war propaganda film and says, yeah, I want to help fight the Nazis too. How can I do that? So she's a motorcyclist. She doesn't join the army, but she becomes a civilian motorcycle courier for the military. And to do that job, she has to be really good at riding her motorcycle. I spent months under the most grueling motorcycle training you've ever seen. They didn't make it easy for me either. They put me through all the same paces as the men. Not only did I beat them, but I became a better rider for it too. There we go. Meritocracy. She's living in an era where she has to deal with Jim Crow, where she can't stay everywhere, where there are people who will hurt her or judge her by the color of her skin. Therefore, she becomes good at something and makes something positive of her life. That's the best attitude to engender. Not just like petty resentment or, like a bunch of futile rage against the machine. Why did I mark this? I guess, he talks a little bit about how he thinks that, 1 month isn't enough for Black History. I agree. So I would almost I wish that we would just eschew the label of Black History Month and Black History for these books and just present these as, here are stories of Americans. Check out their stories, learn something from them. There's actually something I didn't get a chance to talk about that I think is worth talking about. So after she is in the Catholic orphanage, it's not really clear what happened. A lady adopts her, but she's not adopting her legally as a mother. I guess she's a foster mom, so she explains, well, I won't be your mother. But Bessie's explanation is that, so you're like my guardian angel? Yes, you could say that. And then that's really sweet. So she's gracious. Someone's shown her the kindness of adoption. Adoption is one of the most beautiful things you can do for a child. You're giving them something they've been deprived of by a tragedy in life, and you're giving them really the best possible start they can have in life. Her adopted mother, gives her her motorcycle, kind of gives her the opportunity to learn and grow and succeed in this country, and then Bessie takes the opportunity and she overcomes difficulty. That's a beautiful American story. I think maybe the lesson of this is that the art style is weak, but nonfiction stories are maybe like a really good avenue. If you're struggling with fiction, you sometimes can't go wrong with truthfully reporting someone else's story. The weakest aspect for this of this for me was when kind of contemporary Me Too, feminist era politics were being projected onto the wartime propaganda she watched. I feel like it would have been more appropriate to just represent facts from 1940 as it was, rather than make up a pretend version of it, so to have a cultural comment. But Bessie's story shines through, and what's amazing is I can kind of tell the political persuasion of people who write the recommendations for this or write the reviews for this. The clues are there. They'll talk about how, why aren't these stories in textbooks? Well, these stories aren't in textbooks necessarily because being a cool motorcycle girl, that's a really cool story, but it's not necessarily of world historical importance. If you ride a motorcycle and you become a really good motorcycle rider, are you affecting world history? Are you affecting the future of mankind and the whether we win this war or lose this war? Probably not. But the arts are really important because the artists have a chance to look at people from more than just a utilitarian perspective. An artist can look at a person's life and say, you weren't like a great general who made the decisive decision to win or lose this war, but you lived a life and you pursued something and you got good at it and you found success and you found friends and you found happiness. You overcame difficulties in life rather than becoming nihilistic and assuming that difficulties and the sin of racism is something that cannot be overcome. I think a major problem in our contemporary politics is we've assumed that racism is an insurmountable problem that can never be overcome, that you're just doomed to be a victim of racism forever, rather than having this great attitude that if you do something productive with your life, if you rely on God. Now, I don't know everything about her religious faith, but the clear implication is that throughout her travels, she was reliant on God. Her relationship with God was important to her, and this gave her the focus and optimism she needed to keep moving. That's the best thing you can instill in young people, and this is a positive example of the kind of thing I'd like to see, minus a couple annoying aspects of maybe the historical presentation of it. So there you go. I read in one sitting Bessie Stringfield's story. Not sold on Joel Christian Gill's art yet. I think there are directions he could take it that I think would be more effective. But the story shines through. That's the point. The story of Bessie Stringfield overcoming difficulty and becoming good at something shines through. That's it. I'm number one Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell to receive notifications. Tell me what you think about the art. What kind of story would you like to tell about someone in your life that you knew? Let me know in the comment section, and I will catch you later.